We're going to go over the necessary strength training that you need to do to improve your glide, and we're going to start right now. What's up, everybody? It's Dane Miller from throwsuniversity.com, and if this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in becoming a better shot putter, you want to learn how to get stronger, be more explosive, and have better technique, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you ring that notification bell so we can help you become a champion. So there tends to be a little bit of confusion with a lot of high school and collegiate strength coaches and throws coaches when it comes down to setting up strength training for gliders. And a lot of that can be solved by just analyzing the actual movement in the sport in as simple terms as possible. So right off the bat, we have to recognize what is the sole purpose of the glide? What is the sole purpose of the thrower, and how can we get them better? The ultimate purpose is that the individual throws longer than all of their opponents, and that is how they win. Now we know the definition. Now we know what we're working towards. Now we know what result we want. We can take that step back further and we can say, all right, what are the confines? What's the playing field? The playing field for the glide is a 7-foot circle. How long does it take? About 2 to 3 seconds to execute a glide. So we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of distance. What can we do in training to optimize that 7-foot circle, to optimize that 2 to 3, maybe 4 seconds if you're a little slow? How can we make that as effective as possible? When we're in the weight room, now we can take that step back. This is the training that we need to do to make this happen as quickly as possible so that that distance is as long as it can possibly be. Those are very simple questions that we have to ask ourselves when we're laying out strength training for gliders. And that leads us right into energy system. Ultimately, as coaches, all we're looking for is an adaptation from our athlete. So when we provide a stimulus, we need to get an adaptive response. That adaptive response is supposed to then improve the result. That's it. That's as simple as it can be. But we try to overcomplicate things. We make up all these big terms. I do the same thing so I can sound a little bit smarter. And then we try to do all these really complicated things. But if we look at it as simple as possible, it starts with analyzing the energy system. So we've got anaerobic alactic, we've got the anaerobic glycolysis system, and we've got the aerobic oxidative system. So let's do a simple definition. This is going to be anything that's typically over a minute and a half. We're going to be tapping entirely into the aerobic oxidative system. Now, all these systems, before I go further, sort of feed off of one another, and they can support one another. But primarily, we'll be using the oxidative system when we're doing something for longer than 2 minutes. Then the next system would be anaerobic glycolysis. This could be anything around 15 to 20 seconds all the way up to 2 minutes. When we're talking about the anaerobic alactic system, this is going to be if we're utilizing anything under 15 seconds. So right off the bat, you've got to have a bell dinging. This is what we want to focus on. This is the support system. Yes, you can do a couple things that are aerobically based, but they're really not going to help you improve your throw as a glider when compared to spending time training inside of the anaerobic glycolysis system and the anaerobic alactic system. So most of our training should be done in those zones, in those energy systems. And that takes us from here now, when we're talking about the glide. We have less time or less distance to travel with the glide relative to its counterpart, the spin. So we know that we have to accelerate faster because there's less distance traveled. So that also means that, okay, how can we do that from essentially a static start with there's a slight dynamic aspect, right? There's a slight stretch shortening cycle if you teach a drop in the back of the circle for a glider. But for the most part, you have to be able to accelerate really, really quickly. So we've got to build somebody who's got a Ferrari for an engine. That takes us right into those elements needed for the glide. And we know that to have that rapid acceleration, you have to be able to coordinate very, very quickly. This comes down to those technical coordination movements: a behind the neck jerk, a behind the neck push press, a power clean, a power snatch, a hang clean, hang snatch, anything along these lines. These are going to be movements that we have to accelerate very, very quickly. We have to coordinate very rapidly, and there's a technical component. So that's a key aspect, that when we have a technical component in the weight room, it's going to help us have a technical mindset in the circle. That next big step that we've got to take, and this is where we got to start thinking about that transfer of training. When we start to focus on absolute strength, we know that when we start to focus on certain movements like the back squat and like the front squat, we can actually improve our technical coordination. But we also have to recognize that in the glide, there's specific positions that we have to hit. We have to be able to absorb a lot of energy and get out of it very, very rapidly. Now, that is the point in the circle where a lot of gliders struggle. The middle. When we have a right-handed glider, when their right foot grounds in the middle, they have to be rigid. They've got to be stiff, and they've got to be able to control that energy to continue to accelerate at a faster rate than their spinner counterparts if they want to beat them. So that comes into play here, where a lot of gliders have to be very strong from a unilateral position. They're going to ground with that right side in the middle. That's where we can start to talk about single leg squats really can start to transfer over well to the glide, more so than they will in the spin. They still will transfer in the spin, but not as effectively as they do in the glide. On top of that, we can start to really focus on the dynamic aspect of absolute strength, the maximal strength component that also comes underneath the umbrella of absolute strength. So if we get that glider and we start to focus on back squats, front squats, and single leg squats, now we know that they're also going to help them improve their technical coordination. So now we can start to think about, maybe we're doing doubles, triples, sets of 4 to try and stay inside of the alactic system, or sets of 5 to 9 if we want to get into the glycolytic system. Now that next key aspect, especially with the glide, we've got to be mobile in our hips. We have to be able to execute movements like a Cossack squat or a long-legged lunge, anything along those lines, so that our hips are nice and mobile for when we come out of the back of the circle. I recommend doing a lot of unilateral mobility work to try and mimic what you're doing in the glide. We've got to have groins that are very, very mobile. We have to have a trunk that's very mobile. We have to have an upper back that's very mobile. And then finally, we're going to lead into special strength. Okay, we know that gliders that tend to throw heavier implements well will also be able to coordinate rapidly when they're on their competitive shot. So if we have a post-collegiate glider who throws a 20-pound shot really well, they're probably going to be able to coordinate rapidly when they're throwing a 16-pound shot. Or if they're doing a shuffle and throwing a dumbbell or a rock. Now we can start to see movements that we can utilize outside to try and unite the circle with the work that we're doing in the weight room. And so all this stuff is pretty complex. But if we look at it through that simple lens of what's the ultimate goal, the ultimate goal is to throw longer, and we're going to do it in a 7-foot circle, and we've got about 2 to 3 seconds. Then everything that we're doing here must be based around that goal, because that's the adaptation that we're looking for. We're looking to increase speed. We're looking to increase rate of acceleration. So when you think about training through that lens, all of this stuff can piece together. And now it can be complicated, because you might be sitting there thinking, where do I even start? How do I get started writing a glide-based strength training program? And that's where we come into play. We provide a simple, free program that you can click on down below. You can click on the link. It'll take you over to throwsuniversity.com, and you're going to input your email address. When you put in your email address, wait a couple seconds, maybe a minute, and you will get a free workout, a 2-day free workout. It's going to show up, and you're going to be able to see exactly how we lay out our training programs for our gliders, so that you can see where's the technical coordination, where's that absolute strength work, where's the mobility and this special strength work fall into play, and how does all of this stuff ultimately lead to those bigger results. So if you want more information about this, click on the link down below, submit your email, head over to throwsuniversity.com, and you can find out exactly how we program. If you want more information about glide-based training, you can click on this video right here. Until next time, guys, peace.